What's good, people? Thank you as always for passing by the channel. Much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new. All right, a couple of things before we start the video. Q&A is over. Please, guys, stop leaving questions. There are far too many. And I can't stop the questions from coming in. There are far too many questions. I think we're up to something like 130. I don't know how I'm going to finish that in an hour, but it should be fun. I've skimmed through some of the questions, and some of the questions are quite good. So look forward to filming that possibly tonight, so that we get it out Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, it should be good. Fuck me, that's still bloody hot. All right, before we start the video, I just want to quickly give a shout out to the gentleman that gave me this book. It's called Unorthodox. It's fascinating. And the gentleman's called Warren Baines. He's a photographer. And he's put this amazing piece together. And it's about boxing in jail, right? I don't know if you guys remember, Vice did something very similar. Vice done a documentary about, I think it was kickboxing in Thailand prisons. This is very similar. And he's got amazing access. And with it, he's done some just phenomenal work, especially capturing some of the boxers in their element. And I just love it. Honestly, I'm a sucker for this type of things. It really is phenomenal work. And obviously I'm privileged and lucky to have it. But more importantly, I go and cover a boxing show next week Friday. Fuck me, it's coming next week Friday. And one of the boxers that was in jail is actually making his debut on the boxing show. He's out of prison, obviously, now, and he's turned his life around and he makes his debut. And I'm actually going to do a couple of video sit downs with him. So it'll be me, him, his trainer, Emil Bryce, Warren, who I just mentioned, and another photographer called Dan Edwards, who's doing amazing stuff in Cape Town, South Africa. So look, thank you, Warren, for the book. There are only 155 copies, and this is copy number 101, signed. So honestly, it was a fantastic Christmas present. And I'm actually thinking of doing, I don't know if I can get a second one, but I'm actually thinking of doing some sort of prize where someone can win this. And trust me, it's worth winning. All right, let's skip that for a second. Let's talk Kell Brook. Now, there were rumors that Kell Brook would face Jeff Horn. I've done a video about it. Some people weren't happy about the fight. I was mixed in terms of whether or not I thought it was a good fight for Kell Brook. The strong rumor, and I think it's going to be announced in the next week or so, is that Kell Brook will now go to America and fight Jessie Vargas on the DAZN platform. I'm not too upset with this, if I'm honest with you. I'm not too upset with it for a number of reasons. Firstly, fingers crossed the fight's at 147. If the fight's at 147, then I'm definitely not upset with it at all. And I'll tell you why. Firstly, I don't know if Kell can make 147 comfortably anymore. I'm not sure. I know he came in at 150, 151 for his last fight, but let's be honest, he looked sluggish in that fight. I'm going to put it down to the fact that he wasn't really up for his opponent and it was a new trainer. Can Kell Brook cut another 3 or 4 pounds and be good in the ring? I don't know. For me, it's not a case of if Kell can cut the weight, it's how Kell lives in between fights. If Kell lives healthy in between fights and stays around 160, I think he can cut down to 13 pounds. The problem for Kell was that we've seen him look anywhere between 180, 190, I even think 200 pounds. And that's the problem for him then trying to cut all that weight in fight camp. It just isn't going to happen. So can Kell still make 147? And if he can, how is he going to look at 147? That's the questions that need to be asked. And I think someone like Jessie Vargas that's floating around the top 10 is a good opponent to see if Kell can still do 147, still look good at 147 and feel good, which is the most important at 147. That's why I don't have any problem with it being Jessie Vargas. I don't think you do an experiment like that, and it is an experiment. He hasn't made 147 for a couple of years now against any of the top 6 or 7 guys, right? You don't put him in against Garcia, Furman, Porter, Spence, any of those guys yet until we know he can make 147 correctly. As for the matchup, look, I think it's a decent matchup. I know people made the comparisons, and they will do, right? And say, look, Khan's fighting Terence Crawford, pound for pound #2, unbeaten world champion, and Kell Brook's fighting Jessie Vargas. Jessie Vargas is still a decent name. We've seen him in there against the likes of Adrian Broner, where he got a draw. Timothy Bradley, where he thought he won. He didn't, obviously, but he wobbled Bradley right at the end. And Manny Pacquiao. No shame in those losses and a draw, right, against those guys. He's someone that floats in and around the top 10. I don't think he's ever going to be at a level where he's a world champion, because look at the world champions in the 147 division, but he's a guy that floats in and around the top 10. And again, for Kell Brook, I think he has to play it safe. If it is at 147, if this fight's at 154, then look, I have a big problem with it. But if it's at 147, I think it's a case of play it safe. Let's see how you can perform against a guy that we know is in and around the top 10. And a guy that I don't think any of the 147s, including Spence and Crawford, blow out, right? I don't think anyone blows Jessie Vargas out in 2 or 3 rounds. I think he is competitive with a lot of those guys. I think he will lose against the top guys, but I think he's competitive. And that's where I need to see where Brook is. Is Brook still competitive against a guy that is in and around the top 10? If he is, and he wins, then I guess Brook is kind of back at 147. And if that's the case, he doesn't then have to chase the Amir Khan fight, right? He doesn't have to do that. He can then say, okay, look, put me in there against the other guys. Because a competitive Brook at 147 is still, for me, a big problem for anyone at 147. Anyone. And I mean this, and I'm not just saying this as a Brook fan. Brook's a good boxer. I don't know what's left with Brook. But if Brook can somehow prove to me there is something left, I have absolutely no problem with Brook going in with Porter again. Brook fighting Garcia. Brook fighting Crawford. People might think I'm crazy. And Brook fighting Spence again, right? I mean, that's probably the most competitive fight Spence has had. If Brook can stay healthy, make the weight, see what this new trainer adds, it'll be interesting to see what Brook does at 147. But that's the fight we're hearing. Brook versus Jessie Vargas. I prefer that fight to Jeff Horn. Although Jeff Horn's a former world champion, I just don't see what the Jeff Horn fight does for you. I feel like Vargas is more known at 147, even though he's not a world champion. And I think people in America know him as well. And that's the door that Kell Brook's trying to open right now, that American market, right? I don't think he's going to fight in the UK again unless it's Amir Khan. So if you are going to fight in America, fight someone that people know, do a job on him, and then get in that ring, get that mic, whoever's going to interview and call out everybody. That's what you need to do.